If you think that yoga is just about bending and stretching, then you have another thing coming, because this woman, Kino MacGregor, is someone who went from an ambitious young girl about to become the Supreme Court Justice of the world, and who channeled that desire to impact the world through inspiration into the spiritual path of yoga, which is what I've been learning about in her and her genius. And so I invite you to really discover what yoga is about and how Kino is totally blowing the world away with her inspiring message and her savvy smarts. How does the work that you do with Ashtanga Yoga and the practice itself, how do you see that that can be transformational for people in specifically helping them to express their genius, to really be their full self and be that in the world?
When I went to Mysore and I studied with Guruji and Sharat, the one thing they would always tell me is, Kino, you have to be stronger, you know. And it was just again and again. And every time I thought I was strong enough, it would be, you have to be stronger. What do I need to work on in my practice, Guruji? Oh, you stronger. You know, you have to be stronger. Kino, you have to be stronger. And every time I felt I'd gained ground, it was just be stronger. And I didn't understand. I just felt like, wow, they're being mean, you know, because other people who are not as strong and they're not saying anything to them. But again and again, Kino, you have to be stronger. And then I got it one day because when I started teaching and when I started sharing everything that I thought was just beneficial for the world, sometimes I get a negative response, you know, and then sometimes I got this idea that people, probably not my students, but other people were questioning my motives and questioning, you know, why am I doing things on YouTube? Why am I writing? Why am I promoting what they thought is myself, you know, and why am I dressing the way I'm dressing? Why am I who I am, in other words? And there was I started to sort of get this negative bounce sometimes. And then, I really realized, you know, if I'm going to spend my time worrying about what other people are thinking of me, if that's going to affect me, if that's going to determine what I will and won't do, I'll never be true to myself, you know. So I have to be stronger. I have to be strong enough to take the negative and the positive. I can't just be strong enough to have people who love me be around me. I have to be strong enough to look into the eyes of people who hate me, who hate what I do in the world, and do it anyway, you know, and say, you know, thank you for that, because that's provided me the contrast for me to realize I want it that much. So it doesn't matter if you hate me for it, you know,
Wow.
and I'm willing to sacrifice to get it, because if that means that, you know, I lose your support, then I'm willing to take that stance because I believe in it that much. So the idea of you have to be stronger, you have to be strong enough to believe in yourself. And that's what I think the Ashtanga Yoga path can teach everyone is if you don't believe in yourself, no one else will. You know, if you're not the one who's willing to say, you know, I stand for this possibility, who else will if it's your dream? And the practice has this great way of teaching it for you because you're pushed to the point where you feel like, I can't do it. I can't take it anymore. And you know what? You have to. And the thing is that if you don't have a forum to practice that, then when you go out into your life, it's the first time you've ever worked on that state of mind. It's the first time you've ever said, well, you know, do I stay even though I'm scared? You know, do I go to the place that scares me? What do I do? Do I quit? And if the first time you experience that is the biggest dream of your life, you know, you're a really lucky person if you can find the strength to take the right answer. You know, if you can find the strength to believe in yourself. But the yoga practice gives you a laboratory to experience that, to go to the places where everything in you wants it so badly, so you want to quit. Everything in you wants it so badly, so you're afraid of it. And go there anyway. You know, and go to the point of what you believe is your limit and then surpass it. Right. And it's that ability to believe in your own limitless potential, that ability to find the thing that you dream and then practice the slow, steady path towards accomplishing it. Right. And it's not linear in yoga, just like it's not linear in life. And sometimes, and I experienced it in the yoga practice too, you know, people would say, well, I think you'll never be able to do that movement just because of your shape. And at first I thought, well, maybe they're right. And I thought, you know what? No, I don't care if no one else who's has my shape has done that. I want to do it. And I believe that I can do it. And I don't care if it takes me 10 years. I'll do it, you know, and I'll do whatever it takes. And what's strange about that is you might think that, you know, sounds like, oh, well, that's ego. But actually, I think it's perhaps the greatest definition of humility, you know, being willing to do whatever it takes, whatever lowly task it is, right? You do it. if that's going to take you closer to your dream, whatever step, however, mundane it seems, however ordinary, however boring it is, that's the step that takes you one step forward, you do that.
Kino, it has been so inspiring to hear what you're sharing, and I'm blown away at who you are and the you that you have cultivated, and thank you so much for sharing your message about yoga with all of us.
Thank you. Thank you. I've had a great time too. Thank you.
All right, so you discovered yoga and you're starting to go more healing yourself. And then I'm imagining I heard that you started Mysore. And
when I was 22.
Okay,
yeah.
So you'd already been doing yoga for
I've been doing mostly the Shivananda style for a little while, but it really wasn't something I considered my life path. And it was really when I took an Ashtanga yoga class that, I still didn't think, I still didn't think, hey, I'm going to be a yoga teacher. I just felt like, wow, this is the yoga that's for me. Then I found my yoga home, you could say.
Okay, I love that.
Yeah.
I love the way you're describing that, because there's something about genius that I always like to say, like when you stumble on it, you know it. Like there's a part of you that knows, like, oh yeah, this is right for me.
Yeah.
And so you found that with your first
Ashtanga. Absolutely. It was amazing. I just really felt like I resonated with the practice and with the effect it had on my body. And it was actually a few months after my first Ashtanga yoga class that I moved to New York. And I got I enrolled and started my master's degree program, which was from New York University. Oh, wow. And it was in interdisciplinary studies. And I really thought that my idea of getting my life back on track was going to have, yoga as my physical exercise. And then I would get my master's degree and later pursue a PhD. But as soon as I moved to New York, I joined what's called the traditional Mysore-style Ashtanga yoga class. And the teacher at the time, after my first day, he didn't really say, when did you want to come? I just finished my first practice, and he walked up to me and said, this class meets 6 days a week. You can come at 8. And he walked away. And I just thought, wow, okay. Like I was just totally caught off guard. And he was basically, do this or don't do yoga. Because I was like, well, I don't want to go to another style. So I went out and I signed up for the month, and I came every day at 8, 8:05, but as close to 8 as possible. And one day after, in the beginning of every Ashtanga yoga class, we do a chant that gives homage to the lineage of teachers and sort of is an invitation to the spiritual component of the practice. And after that particular chant one day, my teacher in New York, whose name is Govinda Kai, he said, I want to wish these 2 students a wonderful journey to India. And I had no idea why they were going, and then he said, to visit my teacher, Sri K. Patabi Joyce. And I just thought, I didn't know what it would entail, but something in me just felt this yearning, like I want to do that too. I've got to go to India. And so I went and talked to him, and I said, what's India about, and what's this place, Mysore? And he said, this is he explained the story of Sri K. Patabi Joyce and where he lived and where he taught, and I just... I knew I wanted to go. And he suggested I read Yoga Mala, which is Guruji's book. And the night that I finished Guruji's book, I had a dream about him. And I woke up from the dream and I just thought, I've got to go to India. I bought my ticket 2 weeks later, and I went. It was probably, that summer. And I'd been doing Ashtanga yoga less than a year. And I think what was really amazing about that is I had no preconceived notions of what the practice should be or what to expect. I just felt this urge, and I followed it, and I went. And I think that was probably one of the biggest moments of grace that I've ever had in my life, because if you wait until you're ready, sometimes you've waited too long. If you just follow what's immediately presented, then so many paths and doors open that are not necessarily there later, because we get ourselves into a box of what we know versus what we feel. And I thought that was really, really important. And then when I returned from India, I still didn't think that I was going to be a yoga teacher. I didn't go to India to be a teacher. I went for, my own journey. Yeah. And when I returned, I thought, okay, well, I better look at, PhD schools and where I'm going to go for that and this sort of thing. And as I was writing my master's thesis, and I was also working as a freelance journalist, what happened was that my master's thesis advisor, he said, something changed over the summer. What happened? And I thought, I don't want to talk about this, like, can we just talk about my thesis? And said, no, what did you do? Did you do something? Did you take a course? When I started talking, well, I've been to India. I met this man, Sri K. Patabi Joyce, who I consider my teacher, and I'm going to go back next summer. And I really, the more I talked about that, then finally, when I was done explaining to him what I'd spent my summer doing, he said, well, that's really interesting. I've always been interested in yoga. Would you come over to my house and teach me and my wife?
Wow.
I just said, no, like, I'm not qualified. I've been doing Ashtanga Yoga like less than a year. You should go practice with these people. You should go practice with these people. No, we want to study with you. Will you come? And it happened again and again and again. I would finish an interview with someone. I was writing, different articles, and I would interview someone. At the end of the interview, they would say, are you really just a journalist? And I was like, yeah, trying to believe in the I'm a journalist idea, and not wanting to say anything else, And then finally I said, well, I also do this yoga, and I just come back. And so the more I would tell that story, the more people would be interested in having me teach them. And so suddenly I had, I don't know, like 10, maybe around 10 private students that would come to my house. I mean, everything from, I would get a massage from someone, and they would say, what do you do? And I'm like, I just want to pay you and leave. Do you know what I mean? So I really just ended up teaching, and I would try to, encourage people to go to other places. I felt unqualified. And I thought, I can't teach. I've never done a teacher training. I don't have any, credentials. My teacher's been teaching for more than 60 years. Like, I can't do this. And it just started happening. And so I talked to so many people and said, well, if it's happened, people are asking you, teach them what you know and follow, like, let it happen. So that's how I started teaching.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
That is an amazing story. Your calling was knocking on your door.
Yeah. So
one of the things I love about what you're saying is so often people will have an inkling towards their genius, but they'll say, oh, I'm not qualified.
Right.
I'm not,
right.
I don't have enough credibility. I don't have enough credentials to do this. And I love that you allowed yourself to sort of explore that.
Yeah, I had a lot of doubt, and I talked to people, and I talked to the person who was my first teacher in New York, and he said, if people are asking you and you're trying to refer them to other places and they're saying no, then he actually said, you have no choice but to teach them.
Wow.
So
wow.
I started with a lot of humility, and I didn't charge very much, and that's how it all started.
Wow, that's amazing. Did you have at that point in your mind, like, okay, when am I going to get a real job? How did you go from just starting teaching, charging not very much, to seeing this as your path and really understanding that you could actually make a go of it with yoga? Yeah.
I mean, after that, it's not like I introduced myself as a yoga teacher. I was still very committed to pursuing path as, making money sort of as a freelance journalist, and potentially, finding a PhD program after I'd graduated from my master's degree program. And it was really on my third trip to India when I received the official authorization to teach that I felt like, okay, well, now that I've gotten the authorization, now that I've gotten my teacher's blessing formally, then now I think then I'd like to teach more. And it really felt like that. And I still felt totally, unworthy, and I still felt totally, humbled by the whole experience of teaching. But at the same time, I felt like, well, now if he believes in me, then now I'm ready. And then another important moment for me was when I went to receive this authorization. Sharat, who is Guruji's grandson, he said to me, take the authorization now. Next year, when you finish the advanced practice, you'll take the certification. And I was just totally shocked by it. I was even so scared of it so that I didn't even dare tell anyone. I didn't...
Because I have an understanding of what that means, but for those that don't understand the difference between authorization and certification and how big of a deal that is, can you just explain that?
Well, out of the many thousands of people that have gone to Mysore, and out of, you could say, the hundreds of people who've probably received the okay to teach, there's only a handful, maybe less than 50, who have received the certification to teach throughout the entire world. Wow. And I think in the US, there's probably only like 12 or 15 between that. like a dozen, maybe a bit more, people that have received the certification to teach. And at the time that I did finally receive the certification from Guruji, I was the youngest woman to ever receive that. Wow. And it was not something that I ever thought for myself. It was something that they suggested to me. And it took me by surprise, and it took me by, complete shock, really. I mean, and it was one of these things that now what I say when we're thinking of, well, what is a yoga teacher and what role does a yoga teacher have? And I think back to that moment and I thought, they believed in me more than I believed in myself.
Wow.
And that's one of the things I think is really important. If you're teaching and you look at your student and you don't believe in their greatness, then you shouldn't be their teacher. If you don't believe that they have potential and you see negativity, if you see them as a problem, then they're not your student. Right there. And you don't have the capacity to lead them into more possibility, into more transformation and evolution. You have to always believe in them more than they believe in themselves. That's what Guruji and Sharat, they did for me. They created this possibility that I didn't see myself. So it's really through the teacher's grace, really what's called in the yoga path, the grace of the Guru, that I feel like he intervened. And it was his presence that directed me on this path. Not my idea. Wow. I didn't hatch it one morning. I never said, I'm going to do this. It started to happen, and then I said yes to it at some moment.
Wow.
Yeah.